listeners, and welcome to episode 23 of Picky Bastards. I'm here, I'm Fran, by the way, first of all, and I am here with Mr. Nicholas Barker.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Don't ask me that.
I wasn't asking you, I was asking the audience.
Okay, how are you?
How are you doing at all?
Matt's over in New York making lots of noise on a stepladder. How you doing, Matt?
Hi, Fran. How is Fran?
Fran's... Yeah, he's okay, yeah, he's doing alright.
Good.
Thanks for the question.
Good.
And this month we have a special guest by the name of Pete Wild. How are you, Pete?
I'm really good, thank you for having me.
Welcome. To have you here.
Thanks for coming on.
So Pete, before we get to know Pete a bit better, I'll just tell you he is the editor and creator of a fantastic book website called Bookmunch, which I've been writing for I think we just decided it was 9 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and recently started a podcast, Bookmunch podcast, within the last 6 months.
Not as high quality as this podcast.
We'll see.
I mean, I think I wouldn't say that at the start of this podcast because nobody will ever listen to you if you say that.
We're around a kitchen table right now. This is not a pro studio, so, you know.
And Pete is also a published novelist, just to put that out there. He's edited books of fiction inspired by The Fall, Sonic Youth, and some band called The Smiths that you may have heard of but have forgotten about.
We're burning all the copies of that book.
They're all got one on my shelf, actually. And Pete also writes for us at Picky Bastards. PickyBees.com. He's got some wonderful reviews on there, so check that out. And while you're doing that, check the whole website out. That's PickyBees.com. Follow us on Twitter at Picky Bastards and on Facebook at The Picky Bastards. And subscribe to this wonderful podcast. But anyway, we're going to get to know Pete a little bit now. So 4 quick-fire questions for you, Pete, just to give us a bit of an idea of you and your music tastes. So what's your favourite album of the last 12 months?
So this is going to be really boring because you're all going to probably agree with it. But my favourite album of the last 12 months is the national album I'm Easy to Find, right? Which I reviewed on your beautiful website.
Yes, you did.
And so you can read in that review what a person feels like having listened to that album for a couple of days. I now think that my love has grown and deepened.
Wow. Okay.
And I can now acknowledge that there's things on there I don't like.
Yep.
But the fact that there's things on there I don't like makes me love the things I do like all the more.
Yep.
And it just gives me a pure and unadulterated joy, and my children think it's the most depressing thing they've ever heard. And so time and again I'm sitting in cars with them and go like, no, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And they look at me like there's something seriously wrong with me.
Nice.
But I Am Easy to Find just blows me away.
Yeah, and I am saddened that I think we've been doing this podcast for 3 years now, and last year I chose no, I can't remember what I chose last year. What did I choose my album of the year last year?
Album of the year, Nadine Shah.
Yes. No, that's not what I was going for. But anyway, I chose the National on one of these, and I was determined this year not to choose the National. It's going to be very hard not to, I think. So
It's a great album.
yeah, it's a beautiful album. Okay, first album you ever bought?
So this one mistakenly makes me cooler than I am, right?
Okay.
It's 1979, I am 7 years old, I've got a W.H. Smith's voucher, I go into W.H. Smith's and I buy Blondie's Parallel Lines.
Wow.
Because I really
Hell
liked
yeah.
right, because Union City Blue, I loved it, it's great. But that day, I was choosing between Blondie's Parallel Lines and a band called Racy, who had a song called Some Girls. They're an English band, and the album was called Smash and Grab. And Racy are shockingly bad. And the song Some Girls, whilst it could be seen in some ways as being a precursor of the whole Me Too thing, it's shockingly bad. So I kind of accidentally went one way, which makes me sound really cool, but it's purely accidental.
Well, I don't know if you the episodes that we've had guests on before. We've had when Matt started on the podcast, he chose the Spice Girls as the first album he'd ever bought. We've also had Steps as somebody's first one, and I can't remember what Lewis's was, but it was something equally embarrassing. So you're winning.
Yeah,
you're winning.
I like it.
Okay, so best gig of the last 12 months.
The best gig of the last 12 months. I've discovered a new venue, new to me, in Manchester called Yes.
Yes.
And I've seen
a few times. That's great.
seen it. It's such a good venue.
Yeah.
Yes.
I saw Empress of there, who was amazing there, like a young Madonna. But I saw a band called Another Sky.
Okay.
And Another Sky are amazing.
All right.
They're a new band, and you can tell they're still finding their feet. And to a certain extent, at times, they can sound a bit London Grammarish, which isn't entirely my bag. But at the other extreme, they have a song called Chillers, which is, it feels like if a bunch of young activists started covering the LCD Sound System.
Oh wow!
It's
Matt's
really,
favourite band.
It's got a real resonance. Honestly, Another Sky, Chillers. Just listen to that one
Another
song.
Sky.
They're great.
Check them out.
It's ferociously good.
Great. I've not even heard of them, so. But yes, it's a great venue.
Yeah.
It is a great venue.
Yeah.
Who do we see there? I can't remember
We
now.
saw Adrian Lenker from Big
Yes.
Feet.
Yeah.
And then obviously you jumped out of it at the last minute, but that was great. Yeah, I've been to a few gigs there now. Okay, last quick fire question. Worst gig you've ever been to?
So worst gig I've ever been to. I actually looked at reviews for this gig this morning, and loads of people were fawning over it, and I think it's the worst gig I've ever been to. It was Ryan Adams at the Bridgewater Hall in 2011, and he was on his own, and he must have done like 20 songs, and he kept kind of saying, "This is another new one, sorry." And he was being really mangy, and people in the audience were going, "Buck up, Ryan!" And I remember a girl shouted, "Leave him alone, he can play what he wants, we love you, Ryan." And Ryan just looked like he was having a bipolar episode, and we walked out. Now, I go to lots of gigs for free because of stuff I review and all the rest of it, but I paid for that gig, and it was a lot of money, and I left halfway through, which I get my money out of it. So that Ryan Adams gig, Bridgewater Hall, shocking.
And it sounds like the crowd at that gig were doing pretty much what everyone's doing with Ryan Adams right now on Twitter after he released that horrible tweet about how he's innocent and everything last night, and there's everyone going, "Oh, Ryan's back, we love you, Ryan."
Yeah.
And then I'm getting angry and shouting at them all, so that's fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, brilliant. Okay, so we now know Pete.
Great.
And we know everything about Pete, so we will move on to ask Pete another question. So actually, I've not told you which albums we're covering this month, so that would be a good start. So you all know the drill now. We do 4 new releases, 1 album that's considered classic, but none of us really know, and then someone will tell us about an artist they love. So the new releases this month are Tempest, The Book of Traps and Lessons, Fujiya and Miyagi's Flashback, There's Nothing Great About Britain by Slowthai, Here Comes the Cowboy by Mac DeMarco. Oh, that's it. That's the new releases. That sounded like I was going to say another one then, but I'm not. The classic is Easter Everywhere by the 13th Floor Elevators, and Pete will be telling us why he loves someone whose name none of us know how to pronounce. But we think it's Marc
Mulcahy.
Mulcahy.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got it instead of us now. That was good. So we don't have to feel bad about it now. Great.
He'll be tweeting soon with like a phonetic way of saying his name, and we'll all be wrong.
Recordings attached to tweets.
But anyway, we're going to get started with Pete, and his question to kick us off is: which of these albums did you feel was making the most meaningful statement?
So I really struggled with that question, right?
Good, that's what I aim for with my questions.
So for ages I was thinking, without being too pretentious, am I thinking of like what's the most meaningful for me, man? You know? And then I thought, no, that's not the good way to go. This is kind of like, it's like the album reflecting out, right? So I was thinking, okay, the album I think is making the most meaningful statement is Slowthai.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Now, I should say, when I first started listening to it, I thought, this is powerfully not for me.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to keep doing this, but when I kind of like play it with my kids in the room, and I go, yeah, it feels a bit like Dizzy Rascal and Stormzy, they're going like, oh God, Dad. Oh God, that's just shut up. Just never speak. Right? But I do think he's doing something really, really important. I think we're at a point in the history of the world where lots and lots of culture is made by privately educated people who come from really, really wealthy backgrounds, and he is not one of those people. Yeah. He is someone who's come from a tough background, and he's making music, and it's being heard and talked about and reviewed in The Guardian and all of that, which feels really, really powerful to me, and more power to him. Now, I think he's young, obviously, so things like, I'm going to drop the C-bomb, the first song where he drops the C-bomb about the Queen, right?
Yeah.
It feels like the kind of thing a young man would do, but more power to him.
Yeah.
And I think across the album, tonally, musically, it's really interesting. He's not one note. He's doing lots of really interesting things. Lyrically, he's pretty sharp. He's pretty acerbic. He's really funny.
Yeah.
And so even though it's not for me, even though I wouldn't listen to it again, I still think it's tremendous. I'm really happy it's in the
Never
world.
ever put it on again.
But it's that's because I'm hundreds of years old. You know, it shouldn't be aimed at me. But I think that I get the same kind of, I was going to say vibe, but definitely shouldn't say vibe.
Say vibe.
But it's the kind of, it's like the Specials.
Yeah.
This is someone who's engaging with the world that we are living in and producing music about it.
Yeah.
And if you've got Ed Sheeran over here rapping about his upbringing in Northwich, and then you've got Slowthai over here doing what he's doing, I would rather give Slowthai £1 million.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense.
But you think, because it's interesting to me, because I actually thought of doing this playlist with you, because I think I know your music tastes pretty well, I think, and I did think like stuff like Slowthai might be out of your comfort zone. And you say you wouldn't listen to it again probably, but it's nice to hear. I'm just wondering, do you think Do you think you'll ever get to a point where you sat in the car and you think, do you know what, I'm gonna stick Slowthai on? And
there's definitely songs on that album where they've, and you know what, like you play stuff and you play stuff and you play stuff, you get more familiar with it.
Yeah.
So Doorman,
Yeah.
I think Doorman's an absolute belter. I could see Doorman making its way, you know what I mean, where I think, oh, do you know what, I'm going to play that. I could definitely see that
kids
happening.
will be like, why is Dad playing Doorman again?
It's like, Dad, you're way too old to listen to this. But I could also see Slowthai kind of being on my radar and picking up things he does in the future.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean?
It's good. That's what
I
this
can
is all
see
about.
myself
Man.
engaging
That's what this
with
is all
it.
about, I think.
But I just think this is what people should be. This is what musicians should be doing.
Yeah.
You know.
Totally. Nick.
I think I see a lot of what you're saying, and I actually, it's funny you say about the Doorman one. That's you put belter, didn't you? I put banger instead, but I mean,
banger.
Exchangeable terms, really. Yeah. So
you're too old to say banger. Belter's okay. You're too old to say banger.
What are you talking about? I thought Dawn was a fantastic track. I thought it was generally really strong. I think it's in the shadow, as I've said about another album last time, I think, of the Little Sims album this year, in this, even remotely in this genre. I think that's unfortunate. I also, you've stolen as well for me the use of the C word in the first song, which I thought was clumsy is the best.
I just want to get it in here right now and say, and so I was going to say it's my piece, but I love the fact that he calls Queen Elizabeth a cunt.
Okay.
And we can stop saying C word, it's fine. I'm
all for bad mouthing the royal family.
Yeah.
It just felt a little. I think
it felt heavy-handed.
But it's the way in which he does it for me is like, he says, I will show you respect if you show me respect.
Yeah.
And I think they're not showing respect to someone like Slowthai, so good on him. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see what you're saying. It wasn't I think I agree with you. It wasn't the gesture, it was the means of delivery that was a bit problematic. Yeah. So I suppose if I'm to sort of look on the downside of the album, which I think generally was pretty interesting and pretty well put together, it was musical downside, not a lyrical downside. I felt like some of the beats, a number of the beats were quite clipped and kind of, I don't mean digitally clipped, I just mean restrained and not kind of built out enough. There were kind of points when you just felt like, okay, here's the loop. They've done the loop in like 20 minutes and now they're going to put a lot of, generally interesting, clever flow over it. But I can't remember what the song was in particular. Rainbow was one of the tracks in particular that I was not very into from that standpoint. So it just felt like it was selling the music, selling the flow and the lyrics a bit short to have music like that behind it that was just thrown together. It felt like thrown together. And I, as I say it, I can see another side to this, which is that there's an idea it should be kind of rough and ready and kind of, DIY and that kind of thing. But I think given the calibre of the lyrics allowed for it to be more complex and sort of developed than it was. So that seemed like a bit of a pity, I suppose. Yeah. So I think that's all I'd say on the album. Okay. Generally I thought it was good, and I may listen to it again. Actually, it wouldn't be totally off my list, but in hip hop though, this year is Little Sims' year to me. I've not heard anything. That's not true. I've not heard anything British.
You're not going to listen to anything else?
No.
Don't worry about it. It's just Little Sims. It's just Little Sims.
No, there are other albums I'll talk about other times when we get to albums of the year and stuff, or contenders for that they're really good from other countries, but not from Britain. That's better than Little Sims. Anyway, that's a digression. So yeah,
Matt, what do you think, Slowthai?
I thought it was a great album. I love the title. I love everything he has to say. I think he's telling a lot of stories about people that are kind of left behind by our current society. A lot of similar to what kind of Pete was saying. It's representing people that aren't in the discourse as commonly, which I think was really interesting. All the interstitial that he put on the album seemed to me to be quite well thought out. And even his little story he tells about his dad taking him to the football.
Yeah.
It's quite funny, but it also reveals very a lot about his family situation and what was going on with him and how he fits in with everything. So yeah, but yeah, we've talked about Doorman. It's fantastic. The intro song, I really like the way the intro kind of is almost like the first song is almost like an introduction, and it goes over lots of different facets of what the album's going to be about, and then the album really kicks in with Doorman. And then the other, I was reading about him, and he kind of puts his money where his mouth is when he's talking about this stuff, because he did a tour and tickets were 99p.
Yeah, he's now doing the $5 tour in England as well, which is it says it's called the $5 tour, but it's a £5 ticket, which is a bit off.
He's ripping him off.
But yeah, so he's gone up from 99p to a $5 at the minute, so it's pretty impressive.
It's very much it's super cool because he's like, I don't think anyone else is really delivering in that kind of way to get his message across to the people that he wants to, as opposed to, I don't know, more middle class people.
Yeah, well, I think that's it in a way. It's like we're all admiring the album, but it's not really for us in some respects. Yeah. But for me, did you finish, Matt? Sorry, before I.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I've been waiting for a grime album to really grab me, and this totally did. I mean, I think it's an absolutely startling piece of work. I think you've all said a lot of what I was going to say. I think the opening 2 tracks, particularly Dorman, are just like a real punch to the guts. They just really wake you up. And then I think that he sets his stall out with that bit where he calls the Queen a cunt. I think this is his. Yeah. It just shows you where he's willing to go to, and I think it's kind of like, for me, it makes me think of like the punk movement, and it's like, you know, it's like a battle cry. I feel this album, and I think it's really powerful. But I think what makes it so successful as an album as a whole for me is the way he switches between the political and the personal, and he kind of riffs on nationalism, poverty, drug addiction, and crime, but all with an eye on like how politicians have caused that, but then tells stories how that relates to his life. And like the song Northampton's Child, I think is the best song on the album, and that's a song all about his mum leaving home when she was 16 and she was pregnant, and just all the things that she goes through. And it's a really, really strong way of linking the personal and the political, I think. And I had already written down about the skit about his dad and the football. For me, I think it's little things like that make this such a relatable album. It's like, I actually have memories of me and Dad going to watch Nottingham Forest, and Dad saying he had tickets and he didn't, and has been like walking around in it. And it's such a relatable memory because it's just so true for a lot of people, like that desperation to do what your kid wants and to give them something that will make them happy, but actually not really been able to do it at the full price. So you're taking them there and trying to find a cheap way in or climb over a fence or something. It's just so relatable. And then, as Pete said at the start, it's also a really funny album, really touching. And for me, I think it's a contender for album of the year for me. I think it's that strong.
That's a bold statement, yeah.
And I think I can imagine
from anywhere. I'll just
wow. It's a contender for I don't think it is my album of the year.
Okay, but it's up there.
It's up there though. It definitely will be one that I'm considering, and one that I will spend a lot more time with. What I would love to see is a Slowthai and Idols joint headline tour. I think both doing very similar things at the minute, both really crying out to a particular audience, and both making really powerful political statements. And I think I don't know if anyone watched Slowthai's set at Glastonbury on the telly.
This one I've been catching up with loads of.
I recommend you watch it. Now. It's amazing, and it's just so powerful. And he seems like a really nice lad as well. You look at him and you look like, oh god, that guy would probably kill me if I ever met him. But he seems like an absolute legend. So yeah, massive fan. So yeah, I think that's us for Slowthai.
Nice.
Okay,
that's pretty positive all round. Let's see if we get some more cynical stuff now.
So Nick, this album probably sets you up to be cynical.
Okay.
This question. But which album did you think missed the mark a little bit with what it was trying to say? Did you think any of them did? That there was a...
Yeah, it is a very difficult question. As we were talking about before we started recording, it's increasingly difficult to get good questions in this podcast, that are kind of fresh and stuff. So I see where you're coming from with it. But I suppose I will go with... Fujiya and what's the other?
Miyagi.
Flashback. Yeah. So I found this, and I'll say that in the context of this, I'll give some context to this and say I don't do the research. Almost never do I do the research like Fran does the research. So, and that's really, I fell into the habit, but now I think it's actually a conscious choice because I really want to come to it without any contextual information that kind of drives me to draw a conclusion before I've listened to it enough, So I'm sure there are many ways this can be explained, but for me, the album doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. It feels like it's either very silly, trying to be very silly, but it's actually a little bit too serious to be silly, or trying to be serious and just unbelievably melodramatic to the point where it's silly. And I really struggle with it. I listened to it a fair bit, and didn't hate it musically, but I just couldn't get my head around what he was really shooting for all the time. There were some really bizarre lyrics, like the one about from Phil Space about if you're an ice cream, you'd lick yourself.
Yeah.
There were hundreds of examples along those lines. So I just.
But would you let yourself if you were an ice cream, though?
I wouldn't.
That's my question for you.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
No.
But
Yeah, that's just like, yeah.
I think that lyric makes sense, right?
Oh God.
It's like self-destructive behaviour.
Ah, so it's profound, you're saying.
I hadn't thought about
Interesting.
that. Yeah,
Nice.
I just thought he liked the taste of raspberry ripple or something like that.
Okay, fair enough. So to me, the album's a bit of a mystery. It remains so all the way to this today, basically. And I'm not really. I don't know if I'll go back to it ever, really, because of that. It just doesn't gel. It isn't coherent, or doesn't quite achieve what I guess either of the goals I guess it could be trying to achieve. So yeah, that's me on it. Yeah.
Well, as I'm not a million miles away from you with this album, I suppose I'll go next. I think it did grow on me a little bit. There was times when I was sat on the bus and I'd find myself tapping along to it and
Trying to lick your own face.
Trying to lick my own face.
But that's the PCP though, wasn't it?
But I think that was when I wasn't listening closely. I could kind of enjoy the music for what it was if I didn't listen closely. But if I listen too closely, I think it's fucking ridiculous. I think, does anyone watch do you watch Mighty Boosh? Do you watch Flight of the Conchords?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They all sound like Flight of the Conchords or Mighty Boosh songs, right? They all need.
Trying to. That's what I did.
They need Jermaine or Brett, or they need Vince Noir, and like Personal Space you mentioned, didn't you? I think Personal Space absolutely needs Jermaine and Brett in the video. It's a Flight of the Conchords song, but I mean I'm not someone who sits at home and listens to Flight of the Conchords or Mighty Boosh songs. I think some people do.
Yeah.
But I like to watch the program. I think they're brilliant.
Joe went to see him in concert. Joe,
I probably would go and see him a gig though because it's a comedy show, but I wouldn't sit there and listen to it at home. And this is what this was a bit like. Dying Swan Act, which is easily the most annoying song on this playlist. Again, that should have had Vince Noir and Howard Moon in the video. But then there's the song Gammon, right, which closes the album. I think it's got some of my favourite parts of the album. Like there's a few lines, like the line about you Google. I just thought it was brilliant. Like, for an insult to somebody, you Google. I mean, that's a brilliant way of just calling someone an idiot and an irrelevant idiot, basically, which I thought was great. But it managed to have the most irritating music on the playlist. So, yeah, a mixed bag that I don't...
Not much of a mixed bag.
A mixed bag in that I think it had some things going for it, though. I do think there was... And I think, interestingly... you picking it for the answer to which one missed the mark, I think I would say the same, because I think it has some things in there, like having a song called Gammon, and laying into certain types of people, but it does it in a really weird way. It doesn't properly hit home in the end, I think. So, That's me. Pete?
You go for it.
Yeah, so I wrote Flight of the Conchords right at the very top of my little notes there. I mean, I think, Nick, you said, musically, it's not uninteresting. I mean, it could be a New Order B-side, a lot of it. It's not a million miles away from that. But the instant he starts singing, I'm sitting there and thinking, is it a joke? Oh, is it meant to be a joke? Sorry. When he's doing what for me is a Jermaine impression, saying, you're invading my personal space.
Yes, that bit is particularly.
It's just.
But that's the problem for me. The biggest problem, just sort of cut in, it's just not funny enough. No. It's not actually Jermaine level funny.
That's it, isn't it?
So then you lose either way. So go ahead. Sorry.
And the only other thing I was going to say was obviously we're charting a little political line because Slowthai is obviously really political.
Yeah.
With Gammon, I think that. Who knows what's going through their minds, but it's a political line, and you can there's definitely other records on this list that you can kind of tie that political line through with. But I mean, what's interesting to me is I think I can listen to Slowthai and other records, other albums that we're discussing today, right? And you can't not listen to them. They intrude upon you. This one can go on without your involvement. Do you know what I mean? This one's closer to being wallpaper, I think, than any of the others.
Wallpaper, I like that. And I think that comes into what I was saying about sometimes I find myself tapping along to it if I was reading or something on the bus, but if I actually spent the time to listen to it, I just, like you say, it's a not quite funny enough version of some very good comedy shows. But
yes.
Matt, you love it, don't you?
No.
Oh.
I think it's okay. The first half is like pretty derivative and forgettable, I'd say. I think it sounds like a bunch of other bands, similar beats. A couple of times I thought I was listening to Hot Chip or LCD Sound System. But I think around the halfway point...
Or is that praise for because you love LCD Sound System, so is that That's a good thing, is it? Or are you just saying they're too derivative?
If they're just some of it just felt like it literally the same beat, so there's just no creativity at all. And like you say, like it's the way he delivers, it's kind of a drone almost. So it just didn't grab me or do it. Yeah, it felt very passive, like you guys were saying. But it kind of got funkier towards the end. I felt like there was a bit more of a like Giorgio Moroder kind of vibe towards the end.
Does he sing about guns?
And that's when I liked it. I started to like the end. And the tracks like Subliminal and Gammon. Yeah, so we talked about Gammon a bunch. It's the best track, I think.
But is it?
I think so.
It both is and isn't. Because it's the most interesting song, I think. And there is some great lines in there, like you're shouting at Spanish tourists. You're shouting at Spanish people in England, in Spain, or something. I don't know. There's some clever lines in there, but also the music's horrible.
See, I really like the music. I really like the slow build, and I really like the more kind of him not attempting to sing, him just like talking.
Yeah.
I really like the whole thing. I think as an album, it was just fine. And it was weird just to have just such a political twist at the end. So
You picked this, Matt, right?
Yeah.
This is their ninth album. Did you already know them?
No.
I'd heard
one
song. I read that yesterday,
and it was...
So you did the research?
Well, I always do the research on the last day, though. I don't like research at the start. I do it at the last.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You're in the library.
This is their ninth album.
Yeah. I know that they've been around for a while. They're a Brighton band, so I've known them from home.
You said they were American.
No, I just said I know they weren't Japanese, despite having a Japanese name. I didn't know where they were from, but
pretty sure they're just a couple of white guys.
Yeah, four of them.
As most bands.
As most bands are, yeah. Okay, are we done with?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, Matt. So we're back to you. So was there an album on the playlist you thought wasn't trying to say much at all, really? And is that a good or a bad thing in the case of that album?
I think this might be the easiest question.
Yeah.
Because I thought this was Mac DeMarco's album.
Yeah.
Here Comes the Cowboy. I didn't think this was trying to say anything, and it was
choo choo.
Yeah. And I don't think it is worse for it, but so I used to listen to Mac DeMarco. I was obsessed with it like in 2012-ish. He released the album 2, and then he also released Salad Days, and they were like both very like really fun albums that are very laid back. They were like perfect albums for like a Saturday morning, or if you're on a picnic and it's sunny outside. And it's very sickly sweet music, but also just very chilled and laid back. This like really nice folk. And with this, he came and he made something kind of mopey and mundane, and it just was a bit crap, I think. I walked.
Wow. Using all the technical terminology there.
It was just a bit crap.
Years of journalism coming into play.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're going to be in this genre, like most people trade on like super insightful lyricism. If you're going to be so stripped back, you have to have something that comes to the fore. And he doesn't have that. He's very repetitive.
Yeah.
And like the most interesting thing I found about the album is it's called Here Comes the Cowboy, and it has a track called Nobody. And we covered an album by Mitski.
Yeah.
There was some hoo-ha about that, wasn't there? There was some battling on Twitter, I think, about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that was the most interesting. And so if we're not talking about the actual music, that means there's something wrong.
Yeah. Apparently he had to he apologized. I mean, he had to. He apologized to Mitski because there was confusion with the labels or something, and that's why they ended up putting out albums within a short time of each other that were very similar in name, in songs and album titles. I
mean, it's a weird one. I don't really know where. I feel like, for me personally, I felt that was maybe a part where we went a bit too far as a world, really.
Like, you mean when we cared about that issue?
The fact that... like, they've both got Cowboy in the title, and they've both got a song called Nobody. It's
There's nothing more important going on in the world politically right now than the naming of Mac DeMarco's album.
I think his reaction to it was a bit shit, but again, do I care?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you done, Matt?
Yeah.
Pete?
Yeah.
Mac DeMarco.
That's my reaction.
This felt like the longest album I've ever listened to in my life. I'd kind of like listen to it and it'd feel like it had been on for hours. And then, I'd be like track 6 and think, oh my god, it's not even halfway through yet. And the thing it reminded me of more than anything else, have you all seen Animal House?
I am a long time
John
ago.
Belushi?
Yeah.
So there's a point in it where John Belushi's making his way down the stairs, and there's kind of like a good-looking guy surrounded by girls, and he goes, "My love is like a cherry that has no stone," and then John Belushi takes his guitar and smashes it against the wall, and then goes, "Sorry." That's Mac DeMarco.
Okay. And were you already a fan? Were you a fan at all? Because you chose it, didn't you?
So I chose this, right, because my son's really into Mac DeMarco, but from 2012, and he's going seeing him this year, and so I thought, well, I've not heard this yet, this is an opportunity to listen to this album. Now, after I'd kind of pushed it your way, my son went, yeah, it's not his best. And I thought, okay, well, at least I can slag it off here, and he won't sit there and go, Dad, that's so unfair.
Yeah.
But I thought it was so horrific, it sent me to sleep.
Cool. Right. Well, there we go. Well, for me, I'll go. Yeah. Mac DeMarco has been at so many festivals that I've been to, like nearly every festival I've been to in the last 6 years, and I haven't seen him. Because what I do this thing when I go to a festival is I'll listen to every artist on there at least once and see, if I take someone a little bit, I'll spend some time with them. Mac DeMarco, every time I've listened to his latest work and I thought, nah. I thought, I'm alright, it's. But so
even lower than a bit crap, it's just nah. That's the level of discourse we're at right now.
But so so it was quite kind of interesting for me to actually have to spend a month with him rather than be able to dismiss him that quickly. And
I feel bad that you had to do it with this album.
Well, I hated the other albums, like even on the first listen. It's just But there was a couple of things that happened on this album that changed my mind a little bit. The song "Nobody" I think is actually quite beautiful. I think it's a really, really stunning little song. And I don't mind the song "Heart to Heart"
growling in the background from New York.
But that's where I'm going to stop, because the guy's just so laid back that it sounds like he doesn't give a shit about his own music. So I just spend my whole time thinking, why should I? Why should I give a shit about it if you don't give a shit about it? And you're right, Mike. You chose the right one for the artist who's got very little to say. There's the song "Choo Choo," which I gave you a little verse of earlier. He just says "choo choo" for 3 minutes. There's a song "Hey Cowgirl" where he just says "Hey Cowgirl" for 3 minutes. And there's a song called "Baby Bye Bye," which is of course the last song of the album because he's saying goodbye to us. And it just really reaffirmed everything I thought about him. So, if it's one of those things, isn't it? If someone's not saying a lot, but their music's interesting, Stone Roses, for example, don't say a lot of merit, but the music's really interesting. Ian Brown has a career. Drags you in but says fuck all. Or vice versa, they might have really fascinating lyrics, amazing lyrics, but don't do a lot with the music. Either of those is kind of okay, but if you've got shit music and you're just making train noises over it, then you've kind of given up on life, haven't you, really? So, yeah. That's where I got to with Mac DeMarco.
Alright, so I think I probably hated this less than anybody else.
Wow.
And I think
Damn it with faint praise.
Nick really likes trains, though.
Exactly, on model railway set upstairs, So I will say, as everyone has said, that "Choo Choo" is for an album of music that's designed and intended for adults. Is a shocking song. Shocking. It really is just indicative of something that the only thing I knew about him, which I kept reading stories on like feeds from like Nenemy and stuff saying he's the nicest man in rock or the nicest person in folk or something.
What did he do?
Yeah, exactly. Is that a good thing? I don't know what the fuck that means and why I'd want to have that award personally. But that's the downside stuff. There were a couple of things that I tried to see in it that were that I could sort of get on with, and one was the best version of this music would be Pavement worst music. Like there's something summery and drifting and like mellow about it that can be quite calming and soporific is another term for it, another way of spinning it, but I do think there were times when I thought, okay, well maybe he's trying to do a very, very poor version of the worst Pavement song ever kind of thing.
So I know he's a big fan of Jonathan Richman.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Jonathan Richman, but Jonathan Richman does all of that, does it very well. His music's quite cute at times.
Okay.
But you go with it.
Okay.
But Mac DeMarco, it doesn't
work that way. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. So and then the other thing I'd say that I was quite interested in or quite liked the sound of was the tone of his vocal is recorded very, very dry and very, very low projection. And I quite enjoyed that. It sounded quite intimate and kind of close when he was doing the song, like the love songs. Although the themes of those love songs were pretty cliched and cheesy, I thought the actual tone of it sounded, again, it's like a blanket, like a kind of comforting sort of experience. And I suppose it came directly after the Slowthai, which although I liked a lot more than this, was kind of an exhausting album in a way, the Slowthai. So after that, to get to an album, I was like, okay, well, I can just take a little nap now, a little musical nap now.
That's the highest praise, though. Even the highest praise is that it was a musical nap.
Yes, exactly. I'm not suggesting it's a great album by any means, but I think it had some redeeming aspects that sort of meant I didn't completely dismiss it immediately. So yeah, that's what I'd go with. I think that's it.
Have we all said Mac?
Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think it's more passive than Fujiya and Miyaga though?
Yeah, I'd say it's more passive than that. I prefer the. I don't know which I prefer actually. Both ones have. I probably prefer this actually to the Fuji.
If you're not listening to Fujiya and Miyaga though, you can sort of get the, like I say, it can give you a little bit of energy, and it's if you're not listening closer to it. Whereas Mac DeMarco, it doesn't matter how closely you listen to it.
But another way of looking at it is this album does do what it intends to do, and that was the question you asked me about it. Fujiya and Miyaga does not do what it intends to do.
Does Mac DeMarco do what it intends to do? Then what does it intend to do?
I think it tends to be a drifting summer sort of ballady kind of music.
Some meaning. Well, he's writing some quite slow love songs.
Yeah, it is. It's very Californian, but in a sort of a pejorative way of looking at Californian music. But yeah, I think you're right. It has got that summer sun on the beach.
He's an East Coaster though, but he does live on the beach. He lives in New York.
But he wants to be from California, right? You clearly want to be.
He must want to be from California, yeah. Matt can't really comment on whether he wants to be from California or not.
No, I'm saying it as a fact. I'm saying it as a
okay, fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's Marc Mulcahy, yeah.
Well, I'm going to take us, because obviously there's at least 3 really big Kate Tempest fans here, so I'm going to take us actually to the classic first and save Kate Tempest. So let's talk about Easter Everywhere by the 13th Floor Elevators. Nick, I don't know if you've started one yet, so...
I don't think I have, no. And overall, I quite enjoyed this album and thought it was one of those albums where I enjoyed it. I sort of enjoyed it a bit more than the music led me to, because I respected so much about what it was trying to do and how much it seemed to be very new. I did at least glance at a couple of sentences about this band's history. I did research. Exactly. Yeah, I was studious about it, and discovered that they were like a precursor to a lot of other bands, and you could really tell that was the case. It was really like a. Say a Hendrix, who is a massive Hendrix fan, and Hendrix was drawing a lot from this kind of sound, which I understand they were kind of the ones who'd set up, or one of the few bands that set that up. So I enjoyed that. It was kind of weird that I'd never ever heard of them, and I'm surprised they haven't got more popularity on the basis of the production and stuff, but the basis of the music and stuff. The production is a bit limited. There's some things are fairly, talking about Blanket again, under a blanket, and obviously it's a long ago recording. That's fair enough, but not much earlier than some of the other bands I do like, who do much clearer, much crisper kind of quality recordings, albeit all on very limited equipment. So that was a sort of limitation. I suppose lyrically it was obvious era. I don't think it was cutting any kind of major radical statements that I wasn't expecting from an album of this period. So it did okay with that. But I can hear things. You talk about Ian Brown. I can hear the Stone Roses in this quite a lot actually. And I'm a Stone Roses fan, and I would listen to the Stone Roses a lot more than this in the future. But I still think it's worth investing time in these bands that are kind of leading the charge on those kind of genres. So. So overall I thought it was worth the time, but I don't think I'll return to it that frequently. So yeah. Why are you laughing?
Worth the time.
Well, yeah, it was worth the time. Come on.
It's not a massive compliment, is it?
I think
worth the time.
Yeah.
Do you want to go, Matt?
You should go, since he's already started to take my argument apart. Bastard.
I enjoyed this a lot. I thought it was really interesting. There are some parts I like less, but like the first song was fantastic. The drums in it, the way they kind of drove it forward, and it was just like these rolling drums.
Especially after Mac DeMarco.
Super in. Just like Mac DeMarco, yeah. But I don't know. It felt like that 10-minute song just like flew by. But for some reason, I don't know what that sound is in the back. It sounds like a turkey. I enjoyed it in the first song. But the second song, I was like, oh, this is a bit much.
I totally missed this turkey. Like,
I don't know what you're talking about with the turkey.
So it's like a wobble ball.
You know what you're talking about? Okay.
Do you want to try and have a go, Matt? Try and have a go at making the sound, because they'll probably recognise it if you do the sound.
Yeah, come on, Matt.
Yeah, please. I really want to hear that so much.
Come on, he's not doing it.
I don't think the acoustics of my room will allow me to.
What a cop out.
But
so it's like a squawking sound. Is that what you mean?
No, it's kind of. So I'm going to do it, Matt. I'm going to. So the sound's kind of it's like a rubber dub sort of. It's like throughout every song. It's on every song.
Right. Low in the background though.
It's slightly higher in some. It's slightly slower in some. But it's there throughout the whole thing. It's really.
Now you say that, maybe I do hear that oscillating.
Yes.
Yeah. Something was like a vibrato.
All the song.
I just made a facial expression which doesn't work on a podcast.
Yeah, Fran's not convinced, in short. Yeah, so carry on, Matt. Anyway, say more if you want.
Yeah, I found it really distracting, but I think later on in Dust, it's like really low in the mix, and so I really like Dust. Dust in general, I thought was the other kind of standout track to me.
I'm sorry, but this is completely out of context and nothing to do with anything. But if any of you watched Little Britain, there's a whole episode about Weight Watchers where she just makes people eat dust, and they're like, I love dust, and that's just what you sound like. I really love dust.
Wow, that is possibly the most useless thing I've ever had on this podcast.
It just tickled me.
God.
It just tickled me. But anyway, sorry, Matt, carry on. We keep interrupting you.
Yeah, we do.
But yeah, Dust is great.
Dust, anyone?
I think the one other thing I had to say was I quite liked the production because it sounded very like live and very much like a jam session, and it was just them like hanging out and rocking out and just letting the music go where it goes, and they recorded it. That's the vibe it felt, and it felt because like so many albums these days are so produced and it's very purposeful. Hearing that kind of letting the music lead the way kind of style was really, I enjoyed that a lot.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I'll jump in. I also really love Dust. Genuinely though, I thought Dust was the standout song on the album. Do any of you know Rodriguez at all? The sort of Searching for a Sugar Man film. It really reminded me of him, and I'm a big fan of him. I assume he probably came a bit after. There's also the Dylan cover Baby Blue I thought was really, really strong. But I just found the whole thing really quite a pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting a lot from it. Classics on our podcast so far, they've not really... We've had a couple that we've really liked, but in general it's tended to be a bit of a...
Yeah, I can't remember any that we've been really in love with.
There was like Biggie and Nas and stuff that we really loved. But
okay. But then I thought that was...
The hip-hop ones have done it, but then they're sort of... In general, this was, for me, it's one of the stronger classics we've done. There was a few times when it drifted a bit too Beatlesy for me. I'm not really a Beatles person, so there's a couple of songs that are a bit too Beatlesy. But in general, I think it was, as Nick said, it was really worth the time. No, I'm glad I spent time with it. I'm glad, because I hadn't heard of them at all.
No.
And there's this little thing when we do classics, and especially when we get a guest, because Pete picked this as his classic. There's this thing when we get people to do classics. It's quite difficult because it just ends up going back and forth on WhatsApp or email. Just someone saying albums that we've all heard, and we just have to tell them. So it's quite interesting. Just none of us had even heard of it.
To pick a band that appears to be as important as this as well.
Yeah, and then when I went to read about it, it was kind of like, do you know what? These are really influential and like a real sort of critics' darling type band. And really, really enjoyed it. I don't have a huge amount more to say. It's just a nice surprise, and I'm glad I know them now.
Yeah.
And I'll listen to more.
Yeah.
Pete, down to you.
So I knew Rocky Erickson a bit. There's an album that he did, about 15 years ago, called All That May Do My Rhyme, which is just ace. Okay. I mean, it's like acoustic, largely acoustic,
right?
But it's just, he takes songs from his past and reinterprets them where he is. And at that point, he'd been through Syd Barrett-style acid casualty, years in the wasteland, and I think he was arrested for mail fraud, and he did some dubious shit and all the rest of it. And then he came back and did this really gorgeous album called All That May Do My Rhyme. And I had that at the time, and I listened to it loads, and I thought at some point I should go back and listen to 13th Floor Elevators, and never did. So this felt like a good opportunity for that. And there's lots of bands that I like Love, for example, and I can really see like these guys sharing a bill, and I think Love are the better band, but I think they make a lot of great guitar noise, which I really like. The reason I chose it, the week that kind of we're talking about all this stuff, Rocky Erickson died, so that's kind of what put it in my mind. And then I saw Steve Malkmus on one of MTV something or other saying it's his favourite record. Easter Everywhere is Steve Malkmus' favourite record. Nick, you mentioned Pavement before, so you kind of think, okay, that's interesting.
Nick's done Pavement is the Why I Love on the podcast in the past as well. So
I think you could go back to. I think knowing that Steve Malkmus is Steve Malkmus' favourite, you could go back and go, okay, and see something new in it as well. I think sonically it's quite interesting.
And also that implies it's influential because Pavement and Stone Roses don't owe a lot to each other and don't have a lot of connections, and yet both of those you can see coming out of this band. So that just shows how it's kind of a tree that's all the roots of a tree that kind of come apart, as it were.
Yeah. I mean, I just think. I mean, that irritating noise that Matt mentioned, I couldn't get over it. It was just like, oh my god, it's there again. It's just all the way through it. But when that faded into the background, songs like Nobody to Love and Earthquake, I just thought just the guitar sounds were just massive, and you could just lose themselves in it for a bit. I could imagine, taking some lovely 1960s LSD and just having a very nice journey on the back of the 13th floor elevators,
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Should we do that now? Should we stop the podcast?
Let's move along instead and do the next album.
Okay, well, it's Kate Tempest, The Book of Traps and Lessons. Shall I start? I haven't started yet. Okay. Well, firstly, obviously, I love Kate Tempest. And I think this is a real thing of beauty in a lot of ways, this album. I think it's a stunning piece of performance poetry. And it keeps up some of the elements from the last album that meant so much to me. I think Brown Eyed Men in particular talks about the experiences of non-white people in the UK after Brexit, and that's something that really means a lot to me, and she addresses it really powerfully, and it's really sort of heartbreaking and also fascinatingly done. But I think what makes this album so stunning in a different way to previous stuff is the optimism that she actually has in some places, which I think is new for her. I think the song Hold Your Own is just an absolute masterpiece. It's optimism. There's a few lines around when she talks about being on the sofa with your partner and just keeps repeating the line "Hold your own," and just sort of reaching out for people to just accept. We have got some fairly good stuff in our lives, and if we just hold on to that a little bit, we can maybe get through some of the shit that's going on in the world. So that made me really emotional, that song, early on. I think it's probably my favourite song of the year so far, and probably will remain there. I think People's Faces and Fire Smoke also have a similar kind of effect. There's some stuff there. She's carried on that voice of a generation type persona. And in many ways, this is as accomplished an album as Let Them Eat Chaos in some ways, but I can't deny a slight personal disappointment with the album as a whole. And I think it's stunning and powerful and important, but I miss some of the musical aggression of the last time. I miss the sort of bass lines, I miss the driving beats, I miss the anger. I know there's still anger there, but I miss the way she presented it a little bit. I think it's a weird one, because part of me thinks if they had a couple of songs that were a little closer to the style of the last album, that might have been better. But on the other side, I also think it's a piece of work in its entirety, and I don't think it would work to put different paces in there. So it's a difficult one. I think where I come to in the end is that I admire this album as much as I admire the last one, but I doubt that I'll listen to it as often, or that I'll still be listening to it for as many years as I've listened to Let Them Eat Chaos. So it's kind of a real mixed feeling for me, in that I know it's a beautiful piece of work, but it's kind of not. It's not as sort of captivating to me as the last one.
Okay.
In a weird way. The only person I don't know is a fan, for sure, around this table is Pete, so let's hear what Pete thinks.
So I fucking hated it.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry.
I thought you might.
Weird, right? It's weird. So last year, because of how much you like it, Fran, right, I bought Running Upon the Wires, right? Mm-hmm. And I really like that book. I really like her poetry, right?
Yeah.
And I got a lot out of it. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason I've gone nowhere near Kate Tempest in recorded form is because I fucking hate performance poetry.
Right, okay.
If I was ever invited on Room 101, just the entire form, I would bin it forever. I hate the way people take meaningful pauses.
Yeah.
I hate the kind of attempts at comedy. I find it really po-faced and all that stuff. And so I sort of came to this thinking, don't hate it. And then I just couldn't listen to it in its entirety. And it's really weird because politically, I think she's bang on. All the things she's saying, I've got a lot of time. If they were written down, I'd be like, oh my God, I love you.
Well, the booklet comes with a vinyl, so...
Yeah, and I think I'd be fine with that. But I don't think it's... Now I sound like a granddad. I don't think it's music. I think it's performance poetry against a curtain of sound. And I kept being reminded of... Have you ever heard that Kurt Cobain, William Burroughs thing, where William Burroughs recites one of his shorter works, Kurt Cobain makes noise behind him, and it's like, it's very nice. I'm glad two talented people did something in the same room, but it's not, William Burroughs freeform rapping over the top of Kurt Cobain. It's two distinct things, and I felt like you could take any of the music on this record and swap it around with any of the words, and it would have been exactly the same. And I'm really sorry.
No, you're allowed to not
be sorry.
That's the point.
Do not be sorry.
And I that's why I wanted to come to you after, because
He is crying now, but don't be sorry.
I imagined you weren't a Kate Tempest fan, and I know a lot of people who aren't. But have you listened to Let Them Eat Chaos?
No. So this was the first thing I've tried.
I think you should try that, because I think this is, and I think this is where my I don't want to say a problem with the album, because I do love the album, but why it doesn't live up to the last one to me is that reason. It is performance poetry in front of some music, which I'm going to go and see her live in October. We're going to go and see her in November, and I will think it'll be amazing. But Let Them Eat Chaos is something different. It's a hip hop album, and it is a rap album. This isn't a rap album, and it is problematic. There is a problem with that, I think, to a degree. But Matt.
Yeah. Hi.
Are you with us? Are you listening?
Yeah.
Do join the conversation.
Yeah. I agree with both you guys.
I agree with both of us. Are you just too hot? You have a heat stroke over there in New York right now.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm melting. So much sweat. Anyway. No, I think you both made valid points that I agree with both. It's a different album to Let Them Eat Chaos. It is musically not as integrated, and that does mean it's different. But I think there's also a shift in her tone as well, which I really enjoyed her doing this. Rather than telling stories about other people or swinging, like throwing punches, she is talking about very personal and intimate stuff, and about how like she's found a partner and she's happy, and like the way she talks about relationships and her relationship is, I really like really related to some of the metaphors as she's like going through the trepidations of the start and the maintenance of a relationship. And I haven't like had a song where I just like have to stop and listen to it for a while. And when I first heard Fire Smoke, I was just like, this is stunning. Like her use of imagery is still fantastic here. Yeah. And so it's not like in Let Them Eat Chaos, where it's like Let Them Eat Chaos is like a bomb. But this is like more of a, I don't know, this is like a fire. It's a small smoldering fire, but it still has a lot of impact within that, I think. But yeah, I think expecting her to come off after Let Them Eat Chaos, and considering her like her life has moved on, I think it's maybe unfair, but I wanted something to follow up those punches, and it's unfair to kind of expect that, and I'm really happy with what I got instead. But yeah, I'm still disappointed, but also very happy.
It's a weird one.
Yeah, I fully expected before I started listening this automatically to be my favorite album on the list without listening to anything, and
it wasn't.
No.
Wow, me neither.
Okay. So I am also, give some context, a massive fan. Seen her twice, and we went to the book reading together.
Where she recited the whole first chapter without looking at it.
She had it in her hands, just started, opened the book, and then she put it down on the ground pretty much and just read the whole thing. It was mental.
That's nuts.
She is an unbelievable talent, and Let Them Eat Chaos was probably the best album. In fact, both of the other two albums are probably possibly my best album of those years. So certainly Tunnel Vision off the end of the last album was unbelievable. I have to say though, the simple statement I'd make is where is the music in this music, I would say. Like, I don't feel like this is a musical album. I feel like this, a little bit like what Pete's saying, but not nearly so, with as much angst, that's fine, it's just not a musically strong album. In fact, I don't even say strong, I feel like it's recitation of unbelievably clever words over synth sounds a lot.
Yeah.
And whereas the previous two albums had some really great driving beats, some like real like flow over those beats, this was so freeform in its construction, lyrical construction, that it was unfortunate. It was really a missed opportunity. Now, that said, it's called the Book of Traps and Lessons. Maybe she intended, and probably she did intend, to read something that was more literary in that sense and less musical. But for my purposes, on what is fundamentally a music podcast, I can't review this album as if it's a great piece of music, because it is not a great piece of music. It's a great piece of writing with some sounds behind it. And that's really a sad thing, honestly. And I will say that while I absolutely loved the last album, and I think she was, as I've said, I think I've written down on the site before, I think she was robbed of a Mercury. When she did the Mercury performance for the second album, there was a point where they just dropped out, the music just dropped out, and she did like a minute of like just free form, just going through the lyrical stuff, and some of it was different from the original lyrics on the album, some of it was the same, and the drift of that was very, very clever and well executed. But I just thought to myself, wow, I hope she realises that the reason that she might not want a Mercury maybe is that this sounds like it's not music. It sounds like it's a poet, a really good poet, and she is a really good poet and novelist and all those aspects. But she also needs to be a musician if she wants to be reviewed favourably by a musical podcast. You know, which maybe she doesn't give a shit about us. That's fine. She doesn't give a shit about anybody who says that. But just for me, I'll be honest, it was disappointing. And also, I have to say, I'm really surprised you said it was so upbeat, Fran. I thought it was a bit like, I've said this, I think, on podcasts before, but I always use this example. There's this film, WALL-E, you know, the Disney film, the cartoon film.
Yeah.
And it's really, really depressing all the way through, and then at the end has a turn, but it's not enough. The weight of the depressing stuff on it, the morbidly depressing sort of tone of it, still overwhelms the happy ending. Now, I'm not saying
real optimism in this album.
I know there is, but it doesn't offset it. It doesn't offset it enough. It just certainly in the first half in particular, I just felt like it was just a weight of like, oh my god, this is hard work. In all those senses that I've talked about, you know. So, you know, what a writer, and with the right musical production behind her, what a musician as well.
You know who produced
not this album, no.
Rick Rubin produced this album.
Okay, well that's not necessarily. That's great, but that's not necessarily the gold standard for me.
That's just fascinating for me. Like Rick Rubin.
I thought you were going to say Adrian Utley or Jeff Barrett.
Rick Rubin is someone who is, you know, so well respected and has had so. And actually, I've read some fascinating stuff about this album. Like Rick Rubin and Kate were working on this in the studio, and Jay-Z came in. I'd never met Kate, had never heard any of her music, and he actually went. His last album was, you'll know, Matt. What was the last album? Was it 444? Was it called? Or?
Oh, I'm not sure. I haven't listened to Jay in a while.
Something along those lines. Anyway, he came in and he literally said, he watched Kate Tempest and Rick Rubin working on this album, and he said, I'm going home to rewrite my album. And so I think there's some real, like, yes, it's a piece of performance poetry, and yes, I've just said I'm disappointed with it, but I also actually think if that's what she wants to do at this point in her career,
that's absolutely fine. But that's her prerogative to do that. But my prerogative as a reviewer of music is to review the music, and it isn't musically strong. It's lyrically strong. It's a great piece of writing. It's getting there.
It's funny, I think I've read the same things you've read, right? And I kept feeling like I'm not getting something, because I was reading that she was really labouring over it. Do you know what I mean? That her and Rick Rubin were labouring over it, really putting time in to do something, and I thought, it's just leaving me cold. What am I not getting? You know?
Because Rick Rubin won't be able to support the production of her lyrics or her, her poetry. So you're right. I haven't heard the story about Rick Rubin until now, but I'm really bemused by the idea that he's worked hard on it, because it's not a musical album. It's not a musical album. It's a piece of performance poetry.
He could have helped with the delivery.
I don't hate performance poetry, but still. Sorry.
He could have helped with her delivery, right? There's a lot of work to making sure that she pauses at the right moment. And
that's true.
I mean, they spent years making this album.
Jesus Christ.
Apparently, they were making this before Let Them Eat Chaos.
Oh my god!
So it's been in the works a long time.
Right. Well, I'm upset, honestly.
Curious what?
Like, see it live, because she'll have her full setup from the past tour, and
she'll have to do songs off that as well, won't she?
And so are the band just going to walk off when she does this stuff?
I mean, last time she did the album from start to finish, didn't she? When we saw it,
Glastonbury set this year, she did. She did 4 songs from the first 2 albums, and then she stopped and did this album in its entirety.
Yeah, right,
which is what she'll do, I think, for the majority of the tour.
Yeah.
Because she's very clear on the fact that this is a
narrative.
It's a narrative and it's a piece.
And the other 2 were fantastic in that way. I love the theme. I love the sort of concept behind both albums. That all worked brilliant and this works brilliant in that sense as well. But it's not a piece of music. Sorry.
But Hold Your Own is stunning, right? Come on, I'll just say it's.
Oh yeah.
It's a great piece of writing.
Did you even like Hold Your Own, Pete?
Silence on the line.
No, not even Hold Your Own. I mean, I expected to be, apart from possibly Pete, the dissenting voice, and saying I was disappointed, but you've just,
Yeah, there you go. There's always a surprise on this thing.
There we go. So that's Kate Tempest. So that pretty much leaves us with Pete telling us why he loves someone whose name I can't pronounce.
Marc Mulcahy.
Marc Mulcahy.
Yeah, I've said it multiple times now, but I'm not getting
Mulcahy?
either.
No.
Marc Mulcahy.
It's just like it looks on the page. It's just Mulcahy.
Marc Mulcahy.
Okay.
All right. So
over to Pete.
Go.
Marc Mulcahy. Okay, so before I was aware of him, he was in a band called Miracle Legion, who were contemporaries of R.E.M. And I was really into R.E.M., but I wasn't aware of Miracle Legion. In 2001, I went seeing a band I really loved called American Music Club, and he was supporting them on his own, and I was blown away by him. I thought he was just great, and I bought the album that he was touring at that time, which I think was Smile Sunset, and I just was a sucker for him, and I think he's great, and I like his voice, and I like his lyrics, and I like his tunes, and all of that stuff, right? And then in 2008, his wife died.
Okay.
And it was all the tidbits you could find, really, because it's not like he's a major star. It's not like he's on the front of the mirror like, hey, what will happen with Marc Mulcahy? Those people who were talking about him were saying, he's done now. He's got 2 girls. He won't be doing anything anymore. In 2009, there was like a tribute album for him, because obviously he was in financial trouble, called Ciao My Shining Star, and Tom York's on there, and Michael Stipe's on there, and lots of massive names are on there.
Wow.
And all those people... Well, I know that Tom York covers Hey Self Defeater. He's covered it live at gigs before and things like that. So I know that he's like a songwriter. But in 2009, it's like, there are going to be no more Marc Mulcahy albums. And there wasn't another album until 2013. And in 2013, when Dear Marc J. Mulcahy, I Love You came out, I mean, it's an amazing record. It's a really, really good record. It's probably his best record, right? And when that came out, I had this combined, yay, Marc Mulcahy's made a new record, together with the fact that I thought he'd made a really good album as well. And then since then, he's continued performing and putting stuff out. There have been 2 more albums since then. And it gives me joy that he's in the world and able to make music and be a single dad and deal with whatever troubles thrown his way. And since he's come back, there's been like a Miracle Legion tour. They've reformed and done a tour. He was in another band called Polaris. They've reformed and done a tour. So he's obviously embraced a certain level of commercial return where he plays very small venues and the people who go and see him love him, and it gives him enough to get by and make new stuff. And I think, okay, that's great, right? But when I think about his songs, when I think about a song like Cookie Jar, which is on the playlist, I just think that is a beautiful conceit, and it's carried out so well all the way through. And it's obviously someone reaching out to someone else who's in trouble, but it's done as if they're confectionery. And so at the end, when he's saying, preserve yourself, it gives me such comfort. And I know that if I'm ever having a bad day or feeling blue and Cookie Jar comes on and Marc Mulcahy saying to me, preserve yourself, it feels like a hug. It's powerful. But at the same time, I think he's beautifully lyrically choice, right? So if you look at a song like She Makes the World Turn Backwards, which begins impolite and insecure, and in spite of it all, he thinks she's perfect. It has the quality of a really good short story for me. It's like it's all there. And I think he's hilarious. So if you have a song like Let the Fireflies Fly Away, and he talks about the penguins and the hullabaloo that they make, there's not enough songs with the word hullabaloo in. I think that's tremendous. When I saw him last time I saw him live and he did that song, he looks like a Muppet version of John Travolta when he's singing. He's got a really big mouth, and when you see his mouth form the words hullabaloo, it just gives me tremendous joy. And then I think...
That's such a good image.
He's a Muppet John Travolta. And then the last thing I'll say, I think that there's lots of his songs that just feel like just bullets of joy to me. So when I hear a song like Jimmy, which has a chorus that goes, "He's a little bastard," which is just great. A song like Prop Star, I think, is great. It's just joyful noise to me. And I can completely appreciate that people wouldn't like it, but for me, it's joyful noise.
Say that with a little bit of defensiveness if you expect something to come. Right then.
I don't care if you hate it. I love it.
That's allowed.
Where are we going? Who do you want to go to?
Fran, let's go to you.
Well, what's really interesting to listen to what you've just told us about the story about his wife, though, and that album being... that was the first album after... What's the album called?
Dear Marc J. Mulcahy, I Love You.
Because what I've written in my notes is that is the first part on the playlist where I really get him, and really those two songs, which are She Makes the World Turn Backwards,
yeah.
And Let the Fireflies Fire, the two songs that I really love.
Yeah.
My favourite two songs, and I think there's a bit of bite about those songs that isn't always there. I think the bite's there lyrically a lot of the time, but not always musically.
Yeah.
And I think it's there in both respects in those two songs, and I think maybe that's a little bit of anger at something that's been happening in his life and things that happened. So it's really interesting to me to hear, because that was the part on the playlist that changed for me. That was where I noticed something's different. And so that's really interesting to hear. And I think, so he's there. That's what really stood out to me. I'll be honest, playlist, it's mixed. It's a mixed bag for me. I can think sometimes it's a little bit too sweet almost in its delivery, which isn't always my thing. You know, I like angry shit. I like miserable people, and sometimes he's not miserable enough.
For that, yeah.
But what I would like to do, and it's interesting for you to say that's his best album. What I think I will do is, now that we're through this month of listening to it, I want to spend some time with that album, because those are the songs that made me. And a couple of the songs after as well, but they're the songs that really I thought, oh, right, I'm getting this now, I'm getting this.
Yeah,
so
I totally recommend that record.
It's, I'll be listening to that album. I think, in total, it's a mixed bag. It's not someone I was instantly drawn into, but I think the more time I spent, the more I liked him, and then those two songs particularly stood out to me. Interestingly, while you're talking about him doing small venues and stuff, did you go and see him in Gulliver's in...
I did.
Yeah, and recently tiny little pub.
Yeah,
to hear that he's got Tom York covering him and that kind of thing. I've heard, weirdly, never picked up on it. I've seen Tom York on YouTube singing a song called Hey Self Defeated, and it didn't twig with me because it sounds so different. Yeah. Obviously, Tom's going to do something a bit different with it.
Well, he's not sexy, do you know what I mean? He's never, there's never going to, unless someone puts him in a Paul Rudd film or something, there's never going to come a point where he gets a sudden influx of money. He'll always be at the level of that.
Yeah, but he's good at what he does, and it was. I don't want to say worth the time again like Nick did, but it was an interesting...
Jesus, that was a positive remark, I thought.
It's the catchphrase of the podcast.
It is, apparently, yeah.
Worth the time.
Yes.
Picky Bastard podcast, worth the time.
No, that's not worth the time. No. So, I'll try to jump in, yeah?
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed this overall, and... I was really, I again did a tiny bit of research. I had heard about his wife passing. I had heard about the Tom York connection. And I must say, although I liked it, I was really, really surprised that Tom York likes it, honestly. It just doesn't seem to gel that he would be something that he, I haven't heard the version of the song you're talking about that he's covered.
Tom York has very varied taste, mate.
Yeah.
Put it out there. You may notice that his albums are quite varied.
Yeah, but still, this is, as you said yourself, very almost lovable at times, very upbeat, lovable stuff, and that's it just doesn't sound like a Tom York kind of exploit, really. But I really liked the intimacy, and this is way better than Mac DeMarco, way better. Let me just be very, very clear before I say this. There's intimacy in the vocal delivery though that's quite personal and quite again using the dryness of the very little reverb and stuff on the Vox, and that was really nice to hear. And again, it was good because while the Mac DeMarco was pretty vacuous, this seemed like it had a lot more going on, and therefore it was kind of delivered when Mac DeMarco failed to deliver. So that was really good. And then I think probably my favourite track was probably is it Let the Fireflies Fly Away? Is that the full title? Yeah. So a really strong vocal performance all the way through it. I loved the harmony work on it. I thought that was really nice. there were times where Franz sort of implied, I think, or said, where it sounded a bit too sort of almost syrupy at times, like so sweet, so kind of clean, that I wanted to go to some Death Grips or something, But in general, I think it was really. It's a great reason. So in general, I thought it was a really interesting playlist. I will come back to it. And I will explore a bit more. So how many albums have you got altogether, did you say?
Oh, 5 or 6, I think.
Wow, okay, so there's a lot more.
The 2013 one.
Okay, so there's a lot more to dig into.
Yeah,
a lot more to dig into then, and that's sounds really worthwhile. Yeah, so that's what I had to say about it. I think I really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you for introducing me. Nice. So that leaves Matthew.
Yeah, and annoyingly, I feel pretty much the same as Fran. I found it both kind of really memorable, but then also some parts quite forgettable. And I realised...
You're the man of contradictions today, Matt.
What?
You're the man of contradictions today.
Yeah. Well, I realised when I started to actually pay attention to what I was listening to, it was that one album, Marc Mulcahy, I Love You. And I'm definitely going to, as Fran said, check that album out more, because I think every time I realised I was really getting really into it, it was one of those tracks specifically. Poison Candy Heart was my favourite, and I think the lyrics though in that, especially that album, were just really, really interesting and fun, but also bittersweet. And I love pretty much most music that kind of gets that bittersweet line, and so I thought that was really, really fun and interesting. And the comparison to Mac DeMarco, I also wrote down and was thinking about, because this is what happens when you have a similar, kind of that folky aesthetic, and you actually have good lyrical content. And so I think you can really see where, the contrast between the two albums, I think, listening to them, not too far apart from each other. But I'm really glad that I got to listen to this, and I'm going to definitely dive deep on that album, because I really, really liked it.
Well, there we go.
I put some money in Marc Mulcahy's pocket.
Yeah. You are victorious. You actually got the Picky Bastards to like the album you picked. So
it was interesting to see when I saw Independent Compass, because I think I just presumed a lot of the time when people bring someone here who's massive in some respects, and obviously is not. So it is nice to get to talk about an artist who is kind of not as known, which we did with Lewis with CTM. Was it that Lewis brought to us as well?
That was a local one, but Danish local. But yeah.
Cool.
Right. Great. Thanks very much for that. Yeah, brilliant.
Cool.
Well, we didn't do this. I'm going to just quickly nip back and say, other than the Marc Mulcahy, usually we'll ask what favourite album people had. What was your favourite of the list? We won't include Marc Mulcahy because that wasn't.
That's fair. I'll probably go with Slowthai, I guess.
I'll go with Slowthai as well.
Slowthai.
Okay.
Can you guess what I'm going to go with?
You're going to go with Tempest.
No, I'm going to go with Slowthai.
Slowthai.
Yeah.
Full house.
Wow. Four votes for Slowthai.
Wow.
Okay, so everyone should go and check that out if they haven't already.
I really thought Kate Tempest was, when we put it together, I was like...
Oh, I did.
We'll still be banging on
that. I was crying over this album. I'm not just because it was so depressing. I was crying because I was so disappointed. But anyway, we're going to go and see him now. I'm seeing now. I'm going to put tickets.
No, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, it will be good.
It's still great. It's
still great. It's just not Let Them Eat Chaos, is it?
No, it's not.
I'm going to listen to that on the way home.
Yeah, listen to it.
I'd listen to your television. Listen to the last song on it.
Tweet us when you've had listened to it. Let us know what you think. Because I am really interested to see, because
tweet us at Picky Bastards.
Picky Bastards.
Totally perfect segue there.
And before we move on to talk about next time,
I
thought it'd be a nice chance to give Pete a chance to plug anything he wants to, anything you want to.
Send our listeners towards. Very busy life.
We have an interview with. So the next episode of the Bookmunch podcast is the first episode to be done by someone else.
Okay.
So it's being done by my co-editor Valerie O'Riordan. She's interviewing a lady called Wendy Erskine about her book called Sweet Home, and it's one of those books that everyone's talking about on Twitter.
Okay.
So I think the combined double whammy of me not doing it and a book everyone's talking about means this will be our biggest episode. And of course,
and the reference to Picky Bastards link.
Yeah,
obviously,
come on. Now I think you've got to credit all of the extra listens you get to this moment right now.
So on the back of this, I'll be getting like Amazon approaching me to advertise, and
your next it'll be Stephen King.
I'll be cutting you off soon. I won't be talking to you anymore when I'm in the south of France recording, in my new studio.
Pete tried to get me to do an episode of the podcast, but Nick will like this. I did not have the technology or the skills to even record a phone conversation. Completely fucked it up.
But I'm glad I talked. That was Melissa Harrison.
Yeah,
really nice.
I wish I'd done that.
But you're saying you didn't actually try and then it fucked up?
No, I was in conversation and the Melissa Harrison, the author we were interviewing, was kind of in the woods somewhere, and my technology and her technology together were just not going to happen. So I couldn't record a phone call. It was sad times. I'd love to do one at some point. So we'll keep on it. Okay. Well, thanks, Pete.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming on, mate. Great. Cool. And thanks for all your writing on the site as well, which is fantastic, and everyone should check out. Yeah.
Picky Bastards. No, pickybees.com.
Yes.
Picky Bees.
All right. So next time, Nick, you
I'm hosting, and we have another guest actually, Tom Borras, who's a writer on the site as well. We're coming in, and he has picked his 3. So his unknown album is Blood Orange's Angel's Pulse. His classic is Tidal by Fiona Apple, and he's going to do a Wire Love playlist of Frank Ocean. And then I'll say my pick is Sun O with Life Metal.
Sun O bracket.
Well, that's interesting. Apparently, it is actually just the name is actually just Sun, because the O part is just the label on an amplifier that they used to use on a bass amplifier. So I love it. Like Sun O sounds much cooler to me than just Sun. It just sounds very predictable.
Double N as well, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's Sun.
Yep. Sun O bracket. Yeah. So the Life Metal is the album.
Okay.
So yeah, Fran.
Africa Express with E. Goli will be mine, which is it's got loads of people on it. It's got Gruff Reese on it. It's got Damon Albarn on it. It's got all sorts of people on it. Okay. So it could be interesting. Could be terrible. Who knows?
We'll see.
That's the whole point. We don't know. Thanks for staying the point of the podcast. Matt, what are you going to do?
I'm doing Dizzy Faye with the No GMO mixtape.
Okay.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Cool.
Thanks a lot for listening. I think we've done enough plugs in this podcast, so let's leave it now.
Thanks again to Pete.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.